All right, so the next one here, Japan's Kishida speaks to Congress and slams China. So something Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida delivered an address to Congress on Thursday and declared China the greatest strategic challenge facing the world. I feel like this went very unnoticed, but this was a foreign leader coming in and addressing Congress and saying all this very hawkish stuff about China, and everybody standing up and giving him a big round of applause throughout the speech. So he said, quote, "Close coordination between Japan and the U.S. is required more than ever to ensure that deterrence that our alliance provides remains credible and resilient. China's current external stance and military actions present the unprecedented and the greatest strategic challenge not only to the peace and security of Japan, but to the peace and the stability of the international community at large," end quote. He also praised the U.S. for its role in leading the Western proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. Kishida said, quote, "The Ukraine of today may be the East Asia of tomorrow. The leadership of the United States is indispensable. Without U.S. support, how long before the hopes of Ukraine would collapse under the onslaught from Moscow," end quote. Without U.S. support, how quickly would have Zelensky signed a peace deal? So that was, he didn't say that, obviously. That was me. But a day earlier, so this was on Thursday that he addressed Congress. The day before, Biden hosted Kishida in this big dinner at the White House, and the two leaders announced new steps to bolster the U.S.-Japan alliance, including an upgrade to military command and control structures to facilitate more military cooperation. They said in a joint statement, quote, "We announce our intention to bilaterally upgrade our respective command and control frameworks to enable seamless integration of operations and capabilities and allow for greater interoperability and planning between U.S. and Japanese forces in peacetime and during contingencies," end quote. They also announced plans to increase joint weapons production and the potential inclusion of Japan in the AUKUS military pact. That's that military alliance that was formed between the U.S., Australia, and the U.K. Started in 2021. It's focused on technology sharing. They're going to sell Australia some nuclear-powered submarines, and eventually Australia is going to be able to make their own. It's going to take decades and decades and cost like hundreds of billions of dollars. It's completely insane. If I was Australian, I would not be happy about that. But Japan, I mean, you know, there's a lot going on here. I've been kind of neglecting the Asia-China stuff, but Japan, this is big stuff that's happening here. And Japan, of course, is a key part, is a huge part of the U.S.'s plans and preparations, you know, for this new Cold War with China and for a future hot war, because that's what they're preparing for. Japan hosts over 50,000 U.S. troops. It's the largest foreign U.S. military presence in the world. And, you know, there's a reason that they keep that many troops there. And the U.S. is also encouraging Japan to build up its own military, and Kishida is doing that. And this breaks from Japan's post-World War II constitution that denounces war or renounces war and says armed forces with war potential should never be maintained. Kishida has announced several steps to really strengthen the Japanese military, including raising the military budget by 56%. So a big part of this, what the U.S. is doing in Asia, is they want to basically make an Asian NATO and build these alliances. And then another thing that happened on Thursday was the first trilateral summit between the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines. So Biden hosted Kishida and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for the first ever trilateral leaders summit between the three countries. And they announced, this happened, they put out their statement kind of late. So this article is from the South China Morning Post. And they announced several security, economic, and diplomatic initiatives. I really just read through the military things that they pledged. They basically pledged, you know, they said last year we did our first joint military exercises. Just recently, the three of them, the Japan, the Philippines, and the U.S. did joint drills with Australia in the South China Sea. Now, there was a report a few weeks ago that said they were going to announce joint patrols, which are a little different than military exercises. Patrols means they're going to just kind of sailing around. said that they were going to announce joint patrols in the South China Sea. They didn't mention the South China Sea explicitly, but they said that the U.S., Philippine, and Japanese Coast Guard are going to start doing trilateral patrols in the Indo-Pacific region. I'm guessing that that's going to be in the South China Sea. And yes, the U.S. Coast Guard patrols the South China Sea. It's pretty far from the American coast. So tensions in the South China Sea are still very high. And, this is very symbolic, almost more than anything. Obviously, the concrete stuff, if they do start really doing a lot more drills together. But it's kind of, this is all aimed at China. This is explicitly like an anti-China little alliance that they're trying to form here. Biden did a similar summit with the leaders of South Korea and Japan recently. He's trying to mend their ties and get them to cooperate more. And he wants Australia to, and they're increasing ties with Japan and the Philippines as well. It's all about alliance building.